In a primary school car park in Mount Druitt, on the outer western edge of Sydney, a 9-year-old girl steps out of a 2011 Hyundai Getz at 8:42 in the morning, brushes her uniform straight, and walks toward the gate as if nothing is different from any other Tuesday. She slept in that car last night, with her mother, her younger brother, and the family dog in a motel car park behind the school. Her teacher knows, her classmates do not. Her attendance is perfect. The system has no way of recording what is actually happening to her. Around 19,400 Australian children aged 0 to 14 are currently classified as homeless, and a further 28,000 young people aged 12 to 24, together making up nearly 1 in 4 of every homeless person counted in this country. This is the version of Australian homelessness that almost nobody films, because it does not look like homelessness from outside the school gate. It looks like a quiet child arriving on time. At the school gate on Luxford Road, Mount Druitt, the morning shuffle of uniforms and backpacks gives nothing away. A mother checks her phone, a child tugs at her sleeve, and the bell rings as hundreds of students file inside. For one family, this routine is a carefully maintained disguise. Their car, parked behind the supermarket, holds last night's bedding and a bag of breakfast snacks. There is no fixed address on the enrollment form, but attendance remains perfect, and every day begins and ends at the same gate as every other child. On census night in 2021, the official count recorded 122,494 Australians without a secure home. Among them were 19,400 children aged 0 to 14, and 1 in 7 people experiencing homelessness was under 12 years old. These numbers are not hidden in alleyways or under bridges. They are counted in the heart of suburbia, inside ordinary families who keep showing up, keep meeting the timetable, and keep the crisis out of sight. The contradiction sits quietly in the data. Children are present, accounted for, and yet invisible, living in cars and motels while Australia's suburbs carry on around them. Subscribe for more investigations from Unseen Australia. On a Saturday in Blacktown, the rental inspection queue snakes down the street, parents holding hands with children in school polos, each family hoping for a chance at a lease that will not come. This scene repeats in every capital city and regional centre. Yet the arithmetic is the same. Nearly 1 in 4 people experiencing homelessness in Australia are aged 12 to 24, a proportion that has held steady even as the overall homeless count rises. In 2023, Anglicare Australia examined 45,895 rental listings across the country and found not a single one affordable for a young person on Youth Allowance, even after including the maximum rent assistance. The gap is not a matter of bad luck or poor budgeting. It is a structural wall built into the market itself, where the cost of entry has risen far beyond the reach of those on the lowest rung. 89% of frontline organisations now identify private rental unaffordability as the main reason families seek help, and the figures are so consistent across surveys and years that they read less like a warning and more like a locked gate. The market's rules have shifted so far that a teenager on government support or a single mother on parenting payment is excluded before even filling out an application. The result is a generation of children and young people who move through schools, shops and bus stops while living in cars, motels, or the spare rooms of relatives, their presence counted but their housing status invisible. These are not isolated stories. They are the predictable outcome of a system where the arithmetic no longer adds up, and where the next decade of Australian adults is being shaped by the experience of exclusion before adulthood has even begun. Subscribe for more investigations from Unseen Australia. On the outskirts of Penrith, a budget motel sits between the highway and a row of gum trees. Its car park filling each afternoon with families who arrive carrying shopping bags and school uniforms, careful not to draw attention to the fact that this is where they will sleep again tonight. In Western Sydney, especially in Penrith and Liverpool, motels have become a semi-permanent fixture in the lives of hundreds of families who have nowhere else to go. The New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice provides a weekly voucher, $200, renewed every 12 weeks if families can prove ongoing need, that covers the bare minimum of a room at a registered motel, but little more. The system is procedural and impersonal. Families submit paperwork online or at Service New South Wales counters. Motels bill the department directly, and each Friday brings the risk of a funding gap if the voucher is delayed or the paperwork is incomplete. These motels, never designed for long-term living, now host children who keep up their school attendance, laying out uniforms on bed sheets and doing homework at the small table by the window, while parents juggle phone calls to social workers and the daily uncertainty of whether they will be moved to a different room or a different postcode. School data from the past 3 years shows a steady rise in students listed as living in hotel or motel accommodation, a category that has become a quiet indicator of the housing crisis in New South Wales. The rhythm of check-ins, check-outs, and voucher renewals creates a looping existence, where the promise of a bridge to stable housing has instead hardened into a routine of managed instability. For the children who sleep in these rooms, every morning begins with the same effort to appear ordinary, stepping out into the world as classmates and neighbours, while the reality of their home life remains hidden behind a locked motel door. Subscribe to Unseen Australia for more investigations like this. A single mother waits in her car at the edge of an Ipswich shopping centre. Her son's eating breakfast in the back seat, the windows clouded from another night parked under streetlights. She checks her phone for a message from housing services, already planning how to get the boys to school without drawing attention. For families like hers, homelessness rarely starts with an eviction notice. It begins with a slammed door, a night when home becomes unsafe, or the moment a relationship shatters and support disappears. National figures show that 51% of children entering the homelessness system arrive there because of domestic and family violence or family breakdown, a number that has grown steadily over the last decade. Service records from Parramatta to regional Victoria echo this trend. In 2013, the parenting payment single was reduced from $762 to $678 per fortnight, just as rents in outer suburbs and regional towns began to climb. That shrinking gap between income and rent hits single-parent households first, leaving little margin for error. The path into the homelessness system is often paved by months of moving between relatives, doubling up in crowded flats, or cycling through short-term stays in motels and cars. By the time families reach formal support, instability has already shaped a child's sense of normal. The difference between a classmate with a lunchbox and a child without a fixed address is often invisible. For many, homelessness is not a sudden event, but the endpoint of violence, family collapse, and policies that no longer bridge the gap. On a winter evening in Bendigo, the lights of the Homelessness Support Centre cast a small pool of safety onto the street, but inside, the phones ring with requests that will not be answered with a bed. In regional Victoria, the distance between need and help is measured in kilometres and in the blunt arithmetic of the day. Around 96 people are turned away from Victorian homelessness services every 24 hours, a figure that holds steady regardless of the season, the weather, or the urgency of the call. For families with children, arrival at the refuge is not the end of uncertainty, but the beginning of a countdown. Placements are limited to 6 or 12 weeks, after which the next step may be another shelter, a motel, or a drive through the night to Melbourne, Shepparton, or Wangaratta in search of a vacancy that may not exist. The system is designed to triage, to recognise the need and record the request, but not to guarantee a solution, and so the gap between being seen and being sheltered remains wide and impersonal. Funding formulas still allocate resources according to city demand, leaving regional services chronically short, and the shortfall in social housing means that emergency placements cannot become stable homes no matter how long the waitlist grows. Children sleep in cars parked at highway rest stops or in borrowed rooms, their school bags packed for another move, their lives measured in the length of a temporary stay. The reality is that even when families do everything right, calling for help, arriving at the door, filling out the forms, there are more names than beds, and the system quietly asks them to keep moving. Each turn away is a child whose story will not appear in the statistics of success, but whose future will be shaped by the ordinary, repeating absence of a place to call home. Subscribe to Unseen Australia for more investigations like this. On the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, caravan parks once offered families a rare kind of stability. These weren't just holiday stops, they were home. Children enrolled in local schools, parents paid weekly site fees, and neighbours gathered under awnings for morning tea. Between 2021 and 2024, that stability vanished as 4 of the region's last long-term caravan parks, Dickey Beach, Golden Beach, Kira Beach, and a riverfront site, were approved for redevelopment. The park's permanent sites were cleared for tourist accommodation and high-yield holiday units, erasing a form of affordable tenure that had quietly anchored hundreds of families. Council records and resident accounts confirm that roughly 350 families, including about 560 children, received formal eviction notices. Most were given a year's warning, but no guarantee of replacement housing. Local authorities promised no one would be left without shelter, yet many families ended up in motels, tents, or spare rooms as the rental market tightened. Community groups tracked weeks of couch surfing and emergency stays, while other caravan parks fielded desperate calls for long-term spots. These evictions never appeared in official housing statistics. The children kept attending school, families tried to hold on to routines, but the sense of security was gone. In these coastal towns, the crisis hides behind vacancy signs and the churn of school rolls. In a Western Melbourne primary school, a trolley of spare uniforms stands next to shelves of muesli bars, tinned fruit, and long-life milk. These are not extras. They are essentials for children whose lives have become unpredictable. Across public schools in Sydney, Brisbane, and regional Victoria, teachers and welfare staff now fill roles once reserved for social services. District surveys from 2023 reveal that 7 to 10% of enrolled students experience housing instability. Some move between motels, cars, or spare rooms, yet still arrive each morning in uniform, present on the roll, determined to keep pace with classmates. One Melbourne school, facing this reality, allocated $5,000 from its budget to create a housing security pantry, stocking lunch bags and hygiene kits for students with nowhere stable to sleep. Teachers at the same school added $3,000 of their own money to cover lunch packs, toiletries, and the occasional pair of shoes. These efforts are woven into daily routines: breakfast clubs, uniform closets, and quiet handoffs of groceries or bus passes in the corridor. The curriculum does not mention housing support, but schools have adapted, becoming the last, stable adult presence for many children. Each lunch pack and uniform is a practical answer to a system that has normalized invisible homelessness. The work is not charity, but a steady reallocation of time, money, and care, absorbing the fallout of a housing market that excludes the most vulnerable. Here, the consequences of policy failure are measured in meals, uniforms, and the chance to belong. Behind the brick veneer of a suburban street in Altona, the hallway is lined with school shoes, and the kitchen table never quite clears. But from the footpath, nothing betrays the pressure inside. In the lounge room, a fold-out couch serves as a bed for 2 children, while their parents and grandparents share the 3 bedrooms in shifts. Each person takes a turn at sleep when space allows, and the air grows heavy with the closeness of 7 people in a house built for half that number. The Australian Bureau of Statistics defines severe overcrowding as more than 2.5 people per bedroom. In 2021, this hidden category accounted for 39% of all homelessness, about 47,900 people, most of them living in ordinary homes that appear stable from the outside. The crisis here is not marked by tents or rough sleeping, but by density, noise, and the quiet stress of never being alone, where children do homework on the floor, share beds with siblings or cousins, and learn to dress quickly in the morning queue for the bathroom. Overcrowded houses like these are often the last stop before families fall out of the private rental market altogether, squeezed by rents that rise faster than income, and a social housing system with a waiting list that now stretches beyond 190,000 households. The reality of homelessness in Australia is not always visible over the fence or through the front window. It is measured instead in the number of bodies per room, the frequency of moves, and the strain that accumulates when home is a place of constant negotiation rather than refuge. In these houses, children carry the appearance of normal life to school each day, but their nights are shaped by a lack of privacy, restless sleep, and a sense that ordinary routines can vanish with a single change in circumstance. Subscribe to Unseen Australia for more investigations like this. On a quiet street in Campbelltown, a row of low-rise brick units stands behind a wire fence, each window shaded by curtains that rarely move, and behind those windows, families wait, sometimes for years, for the call that means a permanent address. In 2013, social housing made up 4.7% of all dwellings across Australia, but by 2024, that share has shrunk to just 4.1%, even as the number of households needing help has grown faster than ever. The national waiting list now stretches past 224,000 households, a queue that includes single parents with infants, teenagers finishing high school in borrowed bedrooms, and elderly carers sharing couches with grandchildren. In New South Wales, the average wait for a one-bedroom flat can run more than a decade, and in Victoria and Queensland, 5 to 10-year waits are standard, regardless of urgency or circumstance. The numbers are not abstract, they are written into the daily routines of families who rotate between motels, friends' spare rooms, and overcrowded rentals, always hoping for a call that may never come. Each year, fewer new public housing units are built than the number of families added to the list, and the result is a safety net that has become narrower and more distant, unable to catch those falling from the private market or escaping violence at home. While the official figures count dwellings and applicants, the lived reality is measured in years of uncertainty, in children who grow up without ever having their own room, and in the quiet normality of streets where the only sign of crisis is the slow turnover of names on a waiting list. This is not the outcome of a natural disaster or a sudden event, but the endpoint of repeated policy decisions. Funding that has not kept pace with need, construction quotas that fall short of demand, and a national approach that accepts long waits as a fact of life. For the families who move through cars, motels, and crowded houses, the blocked exit is not a matter of bad luck or individual failure. It is the predictable result of a system that has come to treat permanent housing as a prize for patience rather than a basic right. As the queue grows and the stock shrinks, the next generation of Australians is learning that stability is something you wait for, not something you inherit. Subscribe to Unseen Australia for more investigations like this. On a winter morning outside a Dubbo motel, a 6-year-old quietly finishes her Weet-Bix in the back seat, blending into the school rush on Talbragar Street. Right now, more than 28,000 Australian children have no secure home, not because of personal failure, but because the system's supports, including rental affordability, refuge beds, and social housing, trail far behind reality. These children will become the next generation's classmates, workers, and voters. Share what you are seeing in your community below. Subscribe for more Unseen Australia.